I've just caught Lieutenant General Richard Nugee, who's just come out from the main stage here at the Innovate Zero conference. Now, Richard Nugee has been really pivotal in bringing the discussion about climate change and national security defence to life. He led the climate change and sustainability strategic approach at the Ministry of Defence and is now working with Oxford University on the National Insecurity
Climate
Change Insecurity Project. So, Richard, tell us, what have you seen change in this discussion around national security and climate change from the time that you published that review in 2021 to now?
So, I think it's really encouraging. The first thing is the UK has stepped up to be a leader in understanding what are the security implications of climate change. And that comes about, it was one of the things I asked for in my report, is that we really begin to understand, so how does our national security, how is it affected by climate change? Because it's not an obvious link. You know, people think climate change is about bad weather. Actually, it's far more than that. It affects our agriculture, it affects our water, it affects energy, obviously, as you saw that with the outbreak of the Ukraine war, that we're very, very susceptible to other people's energy prices. So there's that, but there's also a growing concern about health, insurance. If you've been flooded out, getting insurance is close on impossible. There's no insurance for people in LA now from those fires. That sort of thing actually affects people personally. And then there's another side to it, which is there will come a time, it's not happening quite yet, but there will come a time when we see many more displaced people as a result of climate change. They can't live where they want to, and so they go and move elsewhere. But we're beginning to see people really understand that. We're beginning to see people really focus on, so what does this mean for us as a country? What does this mean for our alliances, for our friends? Since writing that report, NATO has produced a report which was quite similar. I knew the person who wrote it and he asked me for mine. But also NATO has created the CASCO, which is a centre of excellence on climate and sustainability and security. And so what you're getting is people beginning to take this subject seriously. And that's really important because at the end of the day, if we do nothing, eventually it will lead to more conflict. I don't believe that's an inevitability, but I think that if we do nothing, it is much more likely.
And I think it's incredibly encouraging what you say about the action being taken by the British military, but also NATO, because despite the political rhetoric, this is a reality that those of us who maybe don't have the luxury of rhetoric actually have to look at and deal with. And you've mentioned a few things really about how this touches people's lives. I mean, you said around the energy prices, well, that really hit people in their pockets when the gas price spike happened following the Ukraine war. You've also talked quite a lot about agriculture. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the projects you're working on there?
So some of the cost of living crisis is as a result of rises in prices of certain foodstuffs. And we're seeing a lot of it. You see interesting things called shrinkflation, but you also see that actually some products are becoming much more difficult to get hold of. And I use as it's a sort of ridiculously small example, but it is an example that people can latch on to, which is 2 years ago, we couldn't get tomatoes in our supermarkets. Why was that? It wasn't because the world had run out of tomatoes. Actually, the world was running out of tomatoes, or more importantly, Spain was running out of tomatoes, where most of our tomatoes come from. And Spain chose, therefore, to service their primary customer. And their primary customer was the EU, was not us. And therefore, and this is not a Brexit point at all, it's a point that actually we may not be at the top of their customer list of any country. And therefore, it wasn't that we couldn't buy tomatoes at any cost, we simply couldn't buy tomatoes because they didn't want to sell them to us. That's a very interesting observation, that there may come a time when if food becomes more difficult to come by, and there's all sorts of combinations of why. The Ukraine war absolutely doesn't help, but the heat dome in Canada didn't help. The heat dome in South America didn't help. You end up with reduced foodstuffs. They sell to their customers that they want to sell to rather than necessarily to us. And that is a problem for us. The beauty of the supermarkets that we have today, of what we can buy in our supermarkets, which is extraordinary sort of breadth of products, may not be the case in the future unless we do something about it.
And where do you see that doing something about it? Where is that going to be happening? Whether it's at Oxford University, are you seeing the British government starting to really take hold of this as well?
So at Oxford, what we're trying to do, there are a number of things we're trying to do. One of the things we're trying to do is work out what are the implications of it. So we've set up a thing called the Climate Change Security Intelligence Team in the Middle East. And what this is doing is saying, okay, if there is no food there, what are the second and third order effects? And what we're seeing is actually the second and third order effects. This is sort of an idea. So the government knows what's going on in this particular country we're in the Middle East. We're saying, okay, the second and third order effects of no food, no agriculture, because there's not enough water, there's too much drought, is that the farmers move into the cities. Farmers moving into cities, no more jobs in the cities just because the farmers are turned up. So you're getting an increase in crime. So you're getting a mini crime wave in this country because the farmers can't do agriculture because there's no water. And so you're ending up with the government being put under pressure because of increased crime. And most people will say that's a crime wave. No, it's all down to the fact that the farmers have had to move into the cities. So it's understanding that. That's what we're trying to do at Oxford. But there's another group that I'm part of, which is looking at the health of soil, the ability to innovate around agriculture so that you can grow product in places where you can't grow it now with limited water and much hotter temperatures. If we can modify the food so that you can do that, this is not sort of genetically modified food of the sort of horrendous type. This is actually, can you grow crops in areas that you can't grow now or used to be able to be you can't now? That becomes really important.